Wicked Witchdoctor is a 4-drop with the stat line of a Shaman 2-drop. Stat-wise, it's worse than Violet Teacher, and arguably its effect is not much better. Despite this, I decided that the meta's gotten a little bit too repetitive for my liking, and it's time to try something new, or a new take on something old. Something borrowed and something blue? On the 14th of January, I hit Legend from rank 5 with my Wicked Witchdoctor Shaman list. And a few days later, I've so far managed to peak at rank 207 EU. I'm still playing it and hope to beat that again soon, but for now, here's my deck guide. On its own, Wicked Witchdoctor is obviously a bad card. The first thing you need to understand is that this card is only as good as the synergies in the deck. Bloodlust, Thunderbluff Valiant, and Primal Fusion are the win conditions here, as they turn your totems into something, well, much bigger than totems. First thing I'm going to do is explain all of my card choices and why I've made them. If you want to know why I've made specific decisions, then you want to stick around for this section. If not, you can skip to the time here for my tips and tricks. But for those of you who want to question and critique every card choice I've made, here we go. You kind of start by allowing the deck to build itself, so the obvious cards start with Think From Below. The more totems that you summon, the more totems that the Wicked Witchdoctor summon, the cheaper Thing From Below gets. This card is almost always going to cost 0 by the time you want to play it, apart from when you're against aggro and you want to play it early on, maybe for 4 mana on turn 4 just to block some incoming damage. We also obviously run as many totems as we possibly can. Flame Tongue Totem, Mana Tide Totem, and Totem Golem are all essential. You're going to want to run 2 of each. We're running Totem Golem, so obviously Tunnel Trog makes sense, and therefore having a lot of Overload cards seems pretty good too. Lightning Bolt is a powerful 1 mana spell and therefore synergizes very well with Wicked Witchdoctor. And Spirit Claws goes in the deck because the card is completely absurd. Shaman do have a habit of spitting out spell power totems whenever they need them, and Spirit Claws on turn 1 into spell power totem or Blood Mage Thanos on turn 2 just seems pretty strong. Thanos, obviously insane in Shaman, gets you the card as well, and you can never have too much card draw in a deck like this. Maelstrom, Portal, and Lightning Storm are both board clears that do not hit your own side of the board. We're living in a meta at the moment where there are a lot of pirates. We've got warriors, we've got shaman. These cards are also very strong against rogue, and it just seems worth putting them all in. They're also spells. They also synergize well with Wicked Witchdoctor. More on that later. Feral Spirits and Hex are cards that I've tinkered with. The version of the deck that I used to get to Legend. This is the version that I'm talking about right now. I'll talk about replacements later, but the version that I used to hit Legend ran 1 of each of these. While some, including Subtle, have argued that this may be a little bit inconsistent, Feral Spirits is very nice to use defensively, and Hex is great against those pesky Flame-Wreathed Facelesses and Edwin Van Cleef. Maybe you would prefer to go 2 one way or 2 the other, but again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I believe that just leaves Azure Drake and Burgly Bully. Again, I run 1 of each, and some would argue that you'd prefer to run 2 of one or 2 of the other, but I really like the balance that 1 of each causes. Drake is obviously a fantastic card. We do already have a lot of card draw and a lot of spell power, but Drake just adds to the flow of the deck. It feels very nice. It's a card that priests find it very difficult to deal with, and you're never really disappointed if you're top decking this. Meanwhile, Burgly Bully is very, very strong tempo card. Like, you love to play this on turn 5, especially if you're ahead on the board and your opponent doesn't have any immediate way of dealing with it. This card is so strong against Rogue and, again, Priest, and obviously the coins you get from it synergize very, very well with Wicked Witchdoctor. I understand that Burgly Bully is a little bit experimental here. It's not a card that we're seeing much of at the moment, and some people may question whether Wicked Witchdoctor is enough synergy, but in my experience, it really is, and this card performs very well indeed. I realise that was a very quick explanation about all of these cards. Feel free to ask questions in the comments or on my stream or on Twitter. I'm very responsive on all of those, so any questions feel free to ask me. But now let's talk a little bit about strategy, what actually makes this deck tick. As I mentioned right at the start, the win condition of this deck isn't so much the Witchdoctor as it is the Double Bloodlust, the Thunderbluff Valiant, and Primal Fusion. I think one of the finer points of playing this deck is actually working out when to play Primal Fusion. When is it correct to save it for some incredible Wicked Witchdoctor turn, and when is it correct to actually play it early, maybe against more aggressive decks to buff up a Taunt, buff up a Totem Golem out of Shadow Word Pain range, or make an interesting play like that. Sometimes using it to buff a minion by 1/1 is actually a good enough turn, and sometimes using it to buff a minion at the correct time to make a value trade works out very well too. Double Bloodlust is something that a lot of people have questioned, and I will admit recently I've been trying out some slightly alternate versions of this, whether that's been switching out one Bloodlust for a second Thunderbluff Valiant or something along those lines, but I really do like Double Bloodlust. Fact is, playing Double Bloodlust on one turn when you've got 10 mana is usually quite crippling, and your opponent won't be playing around that. Sometimes you can pick up lethal with 2 or even just 1 minion, and your opponent just won't expect it. Against decks like Control Warrior, the Double Bloodlust feels somewhat necessary. Often you won't ever get the damage unless you play both of these cards. Thunderbluff Valiant obviously creates this whole new threat of its own. There is a reason that mid-range Shaman was so strong before Jade cards were added. The deck is still good enough, and Thunderbluff Valiant is a 3/6, which isn't bad stats. It's hard to kill this card, and you also have to kill the threats that it makes. But let's talk about the crux of the deck, the Wicked Witchdoctor herself. When is it actually correct to play this card? And personally for me, my favourite play is turn 4, Wicked Witchdoctor, coin, Lightning Bolt, or Primal Fusion. Both of these plays end up being fantastic. Lightning Bolt in particular can actually completely destroy your opponent's board whilst also flipping the tempo. The good thing is about the Witchdoctor, which makes her so much better than Violet Teacher, aside from all of the synergies with Primal Fusion and Thing from Below, is the fact that the totems themselves are kind of threatening. You'll often in any Shaman deck see your opponent swing their Fiery War Axe or even a Gorehowl into a Spell Power Totem or Healing Totem at the right time, and actually that doesn't change just because you've got Wicked Witchdoctor on the board. Sometimes these totems are enough of a threat. Having to force your opponent to decide when to use the board clears and which targets to prioritize can be really hard for them. And once you've got a board where you've got Burgly Bully and Wicked Witchdoctor both on the board ready to go, it gets hard for them to work out how they're going to deal with this. Board clears does lead me to another point, and this is actually the worst thing about the deck, is that it does struggle against board clears. Not so much the decks that only run 1 or 2, but the decks like Reno Lock and Reno Mage and Reno Priest. Yes, there is a theme here. These decks, I mean, let's just take Reno Lock for an example, because a lot of people say to me, Dan, how can you possibly say this deck is weak against Reno decks? How can a deck with 2 Bloodlusts be weak against Reno decks? Well, listen to this. You're playing against a Reno Lock. You build a board of totems. They play Demon Fire. You put more stuff on the board. They play Hellfire. They play Kazakus into a potion, into Abyssal Enforcer, into Fellfire Potion. Yes, I have seen Fellfire Potion. Into Shadow Flame, into Twisting Nether. It's not a fun game for a deck that relies so much on having a wide board. These decks can be beaten, but it's very much a matter of allocating your resources, not going too wide, holding on to some of the key cards. This is also where card draw is important. If your opponent completely clears your board and you then come back with Mana Tide Totem, Hero Power, that's pretty frustrating for your opponent. The really great thing about Wicked Witchdoctor, something that I should have mentioned earlier, is the fact that the totem that she summons spawns actually before the spell you're activated gets its effect. What I mean by that is when you play Witchdoctor Coin Lightning Bolt, if playing the coin got you a Spell Power Totem from Wicked Witchdoctor, and then playing Lightning Bolt got you another Spell Power Totem from Wicked Witchdoctor, this Lightning Bolt would deal 5 damage. Where this really shines is when you're making some sort of play with Maelstrom Portal or Lightning Storm. And you can actually deal a lot of damage with these board clear spells. You can pretty much deal Elemental Destruction amount of damage with Lightning Storm pretty often. Again, working out when to use Maelstrom Portal and Lightning Storm is one of the harder parts to playing this deck. You want to make sure that if you're against a more control deck where you're not likely to get much value from them, you want to make sure that you squeeze them in when you can. Maybe even playing Maelstrom Portal just to summon the extra minion to threaten lethal with Bloodlust. There are a lot of intricacies to playing this deck. Now, some things that you could do to swap this deck around, as I mentioned earlier, you could switch out one Bloodlust for one Thunderbluff Valiant. That's something that I'm trying at the moment. I don't know how effective it is really. I might end up switching back, but I don't know. Same with the Hex and the Feral Spirits. You could go one way to the other. I've been trying double Feral Spirits recently, but that seems to really suck against Rogue. At the same time, with Drake and Burgly Bully, you can remove one and run two of the other, and I've been trying it with 2 Drake recently, and again, it sucks against Rogue. I don't think these changes are optimum, that's why I'm supplying you with the original list. Another thing I've been trying a bunch of recently is actually running Earthshock and Devolve. Devolve is so good against Rogue. And the good thing is about these spells is that they are cheap spells. They work very well with Wicked Witchdoctor. So I'm trying combinations of these cards at the moment, but I think the majority of the cards should stay the way that it is. I don't like Totemic Might very much, as it doesn't do anything. Like, unless you have the totems on the board, it doesn't really do anything. And like, if you ran some kind of cycle deck with Auctioneer, then maybe it would work, but I feel like if you've just got them there to synergize with Wicked Witchdoctor, it's not good enough. Finally, matchups. As I mentioned before, Reno matchups are hard. When I was climbing to Legend, I found that I was favored against Reno Mage, but unfavored against Reno Lock and Reno Priest. Not sure how accurate that is, because more recently I found that I'm unfavored against Mage. But I feel as though the deck is favored versus most other Shaman, and Rogue, and Warriors. Aggro Warriors, that is, not Control. Control Warrior is hard because of the Brawls and the Revengers and the fact that they can then Justicry and heal themselves up and generally win in Fatigue. Control Shaman are also hard because double Lightning Bolt, double Maelstrom, double Elemental Destruction is a little bit too much for your board to deal with. But aggressive and mid-range Shaman are great. Like, you're running double Lightning Storm and double Maelstrom. That alone increases the matchup dramatically. And I found that even against the Reno decks and Control Warrior decks and other slow decks like that, like Priest as well, you can often use Bloodlust just to sneak a win. Anyways, that's pretty much all I've got to say about the deck for now off the top of my head. Please do give me feedback for this video. Let me know what you think of the deck in the comments. Do like this video and like the deck on hearthpwn if you can, if you enjoyed it. Like it if you don't like it either. Like, likes do help out a whole ton. And please stop by, drop me a message on Twitter, stop by my stream. I will answer any and all questions. And I'm not really done with Wicked Witchdoctor just yet. I have a lot more that I want to do. I have a lot more experiments, a lot more tech choices I want to try out. I feel like this is going to be a thing probably for the rest of this month for me at least. It's a very exciting archetype and I want to make the most of it before Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem rotate out, making Shaman useless.
I want to cast the spell. My totems! My pretty totems! My pretties!
I wonder. I wonder.
Wanted, dead or alive.
Time runs out on me.